Hello and welcome to this edition of Wineskins. I'm Father Jim Corda. Wineskins is a program that features reflections on the lives of the saints and the sacred scriptures, along with a variety of issues and topics, all from a Catholic perspective. Wineskins is brought to you through the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. On our program today, I will interview Sister Norma Roppel and Sister Regina Rogers in Part 3 of our television series called Spotlight. We will also hear more information on the life and times of St. Padre Pio. And today, as the Church celebrates the 25th Sunday in Ordinary Time, we will get a deeper insight into those particular Sunday readings. That and more on Wineskins. Now I will speak with Jackie Zufall, the president of Holy Cross Academy in Stark County. Joining me now is Jackie Zufall, who is the president of Holy Cross Academy in Stark County. And Jackie, it's a pleasure to have you on Wineskins today.
Thank you, Father Jim. I'm happy to be here.
You know, taking on that responsibility is a big responsibility, and we know that there's many challenges and certain things that I'm sure you have in store for Holy Cross Academy. But before we get into our discussion about it specifically, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I live in Alliance, Ohio. I taught in Alliance City Schools for 10 years and then took some time off, went back and started a position as principal at St. James in Waynesburg, a nice little rural town and school. Then moved on to St. Paul School in North Canton, Ohio, and I was there for 20 years. My husband and I have two grown young men now, and I looked at Holy Cross Academy as maybe a next opportunity to help our schools in Stark County.
Well, certainly you have the wealth of experience behind you and with you as you move into that position. And we know that there's lots of challenges that lie ahead, not only for Holy Cross, but I think for Catholic education, not just here in the diocese, but around our country. What are some of the challenges that are specific to Holy Cross that you'd like to address in this coming year and the couple years ahead?
Well, certainly the financial piece is going to be front and center for issues that we're concerned about. The schools have lost some enrollment up through probably the last 20 years, up and down in enrollment. However, we are seeing a leveling out of that now. But with that, the loss of enrollment came the loss of tuition as well. And what we want to do is to be able to keep up with our ever-growing needs in the budget. So that is one thing that we're going to be looking at, perhaps funding our schools in a way that doesn't rely totally on tuition or totally on philanthropy. So we might be looking at some mission-related endeavors that we could add to our Holy Cross Academy budget.
We know that parents are oftentimes very involved in Catholic schools, and they have been over the years, and many of the wonderful volunteers that you have are the parents themselves. What are some roles that the parents play, or you see them playing in revitalizing and building up the Catholic schools in our area?
Well, Father Jim, I think the parents are the key to making sure that our schools are becoming vibrant, staying that way and becoming even more so. They are the ones who are front and center, wanting their children to have that faith education, to have the discipline that goes along with Catholic schools, to have that academic excellence piece. And so everything is key for their volunteering, for their getting involved, for their support of the teachers, and making sure that they're active parishioners as well.
What would you see as your primary role, at least what you would like to accomplish as you begin this new position as president?
Well, we have 10 schools, and they are situated from Alliance all the way over into Canal Fulton and the western side of Massillon. And there's 10 schools, and each one has its own niche. Each one is connected very much to its parish. Some are large, some are small. And what I want to do is develop that niche for each school, depending on the demographics and the people and the families it serves, depending on the town that it's in and the resources available. So we're working very much towards developing each parish and school as its own, but bringing it together as a system.
And I think that's really the strength of that whole academy, is to look at the regionalization of how we can work together.
That's right.
To do that. Because, what we found is that doing things on our own doesn't work anymore.
Not as well. And together, we've already formed a great sports program, and now we're looking into the arts and even more after that.
Well, in closing, what would you like to tell the folks that are with us that they could do for you, or that you would like them to do for Catholic education?
Well, continue to support their children in our schools, get involved as much as possible. Keep an open mind, because the system of Holy Cross Academy has some great things ahead.
Well, Jackie Zufall, we certainly wish you well in your new position. We
Thank
know
you.
You'll do very well. You've got a great background, wonderful experience. You're well loved, and I know you'll bring a very needed element to this whole program. So we thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Father Jim. Thanks for having me on today.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. Padre Pio was a priest and mystic. To tell us more is Jim Vanek from St. Michael Church in Canfield.
Francesco, named in honor of St. Francis of Assisi, was born to parents who were peasant farmers in the small Italian village of Pietrelcina on May 25, 1887. From his childhood, Francesco was very devout and at an early age felt drawn to the priesthood. At the age of 15, he joined the Capuchins and became a novice a year later. He received the habit in 1902 and was ordained to the priesthood in 1910 after 7 years of study, becoming known as Padre Pio. He was drafted during World War I, but when he was discovered to have tuberculosis, he was discharged. In 1917, he was assigned to the friary in San Giovanni Rotondo, 75 miles from the city of Bari on the Adriatic. On September 20th, 1918, Padre Pio was kneeling in front of a large crucifix when he had a vision of Jesus. When the vision ended, he had the stigmata, the visible marks of the crucifixion, in his hands, feet, and side, making him the first stigmatized priest in the history of the Church. The doctor who examined him could not find any natural cause for the wounds. Life became more complicated after that for Padre Pio. Medical doctors, church authorities, and curiosity seekers came to see him. In 1924 and again in 1931, the authenticity of the stigmata was questioned. Padre Pio was not permitted to celebrate Mass publicly or to hear confessions. He did not complain of these decisions, which were soon reversed. However, he wrote no letters after 1924. His only other writing, a pamphlet on the agony of Jesus, was done before 1924. Padre Pio rarely left the friary when he received the stigmata, but busloads of people soon began coming to see him. Each morning after a 5 a.m. Mass in a crowded church, he heard confessions until noon. He took a mid-morning break to bless the sick and all who came to see him. Every afternoon he also heard confessions. His confessional ministry would take perhaps 10 hours a day or more. Penitents had to take a number so that situation could be handled. Many of them have said that Padre Pio knew details of their lives that they had never mentioned. Padre Pio saw Jesus in all the sick and suffering, and at his urging, a fine 350-bed hospital was built on nearby Mount Gargano. The idea arose in 1940. A committee began to collect money. Ground was broken in 1946. Building the hospital was a technical wonder because of the difficulty of getting water there and of hauling up the building supplies. One of Padre Pio's sufferings was the unscrupulous people several times circulating prophecies that they claimed originated from him. He never made prophecies about world events and never gave an opinion on matters that he felt belonged to church authorities. Upon his death in 1968, his wounds were no longer visible. In fact, there was no scarring and the skin was completely renewed. He had predicted 50 years prior that upon his death, the wounds would heal. The wounds of the stigmata were not the only mystical phenomenon experienced by Padre Pio. The blood from the stigmata had an odor described by many as similar to that of perfume or flowers, and the gift of bilocation was attributed to him. Padre Pio had the ability to read the hearts of the penitents who flocked to him for confession, which he heard for 10 or 12 hours per day. Padre Pio used the confessional to bring both sinners and devout souls closer to God. he would know just the right word of counsel or encouragement that was needed. He died on September 23, 1968, at the age of 81. His funeral was attended by 100,000 people. He was beatified in 1999 and canonized in 2002. For Wineskins, I'm Jim Krivenek from St. Michael Parish in Canfield.
I'm talking with Sister Regina Rogers and Sister Norma Roppel from the Ursuline Sisters of Youngstown. We know that Pope Francis declared a year celebrating consecrated life. Give us a brief history about that, and what did the Pope actually say about it?
I would encourage anybody who hasn't read it to go read it. It is a beautiful, uplifting, and challenging letter to the Church as a whole about the importance of religious life, the gift that religious life is to the Church, and a challenge to us to live joy-filled, service-filled lives. So it's a beautiful letter.
And what exactly did Pope Francis say that incited you or the Ursulines?
Pope Francis really reminded us to really continue to be grateful, and we are, for St. Angela, for our past, but to live passionately in the future, to really continue to wake up the world in our prophetic witness to the gospel values. And he really, it's like he's always challenging the whole world to respond to the people at the margins, at the periphery. And we have in our new ministries of HIV/AIDS outreach, Beatitude House, Dorothy Day House, I feel that we're doing exactly what Francis is asking us to do, but we can always improve in that. He also really challenges us and admires us for our community way of life, but challenges us to be better at it and include more people, to widen our circles and be present and respect the dignity and the gifts of all people in all different congregations, lay people, clergy, and to help build the church.
You had mentioned about being grateful for the past, which is important because that's where we came from, and so we need to remember that, but we can't live in the past. But then to look for the future is also important because we have to plan for that. But perhaps the most important thing is living in the present. So what in the present right now are the Ursulines celebrating? For example, you probably have a lot of wonderful volunteers. There might be someone that's listening today that thought about it but never really took the initiative to get involved with the Ursulines. What are some opportunities that they could have, Sister Regina?
I think one of the things that's happened, people have seen the declining numbers in religious life as a negative, and it is. But on the other hand, we have attracted many more volunteers, many more associates to the community. So rather than our community, in the broad sense of community, getting smaller, ours has gotten larger thanks to our associates, people who have given to us, been generous to us. So one of the things we have to be very grateful for are the people who continue to support us, both in our ministries and financially and with their prayers, who join us, for example, for celebrations that we have. We're very, very blessed with the people who have been part of our lives.
Mm-hmm. And I would imagine that there are young women that come under your tutelage, Sister Norma, who try to discern a vocation that might be instilled to want to give back to the Ursuline community, even if they choose not to become a religious sister. So what would you encourage them to do or to be aware of when they come in an associate program with you?
Well, I think just build relationships with us, get to know us, give us a chance to get to know them, and be part of the community aspect. But also, like in our nonprofits, there are committees, there are boards, and we have several associates now who are in leadership positions at Beatitude House, in our HIV/AIDS outreach. So they grow with us, they get to know Angela, and they're challenged by the gospel as we are. We support them also. It's a mutual kind of relationship in their involvement in their parishes, in their outreach to the poor in their own circles. So it's a very reciprocal type of relationship.
And of course, today you're celebrating this year 140 years. What was significant about the anniversary?
Other than the fact that we have been rooted here in the Mahoning Valley and have been committed to the Mahoning Valley for 140 years, I think we found that very significant, that our primary responsibility has been to the church in Youngstown, and I think we've maintained that over these 140 years.
If someone is listening and would like to get more information, is there a phone number or website? What can they do to contact the Ursuline community?
We have a website, so I would tell them to go to our website, Youngstown Ursulines, and they can get a lot of information about us. They can write in. We have a sister who really does a beautiful job of keeping the website updated. Also, we have our Facebook page, so we've really moved into technology. So,
yes.
And we would welcome visitors anytime if they would like to come to our mother house on Shields Road. The doors are open. One of the gifts I think that the Ursulines do bring is the gift of hospitality, and we want people to know that they are welcome. If they have a need that they would like us to pray for, if they call us or email us, we would certainly add that to our prayers.
What would St. Angela Merici say today to you Ursuline sisters?
I think she would just encourage us to keep living the gospel values, but to continue to support and love each other as we're doing that. She's always told us to have Jesus as your one and only treasure. Always go, take your refuge at the feet of Jesus. So she would keep us focused, but going out beyond ourselves, but going out together as sisters.
And Sister Regina, one final word to the folks that are with us that you'd like to say to them about the Ursuline community.
My final word would be, I think religious life is a wonderful way to spend your life, and I would encourage people to enter into conversation about it with young women that they might know. I would also want to say thank you very much to all of those people who over these 140 years have supported us and walked with us in our journey.
Well, Sister Regina Rogers, Sister Norma Rappel, we want to thank you for your presence on our show today. I am a product of the Ursuline Sisters from Immaculate Conception School and Church and also Ursuline High School. And I thank you for giving that to me, and we hope that we can continue to give back to the Ursulines for the wonderful ministry that you provide over the years and will continue to do in the future.
Oh, thank you for having us.
And thank you for being with us. Have a good day, and God be with you. For more pertinent information, visit www.doy.org, the website of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
33 million Americans have descended into poverty. And as their futures fall, so does our nation's.
The Johnsons enjoy Friday dinners out. Nothing fancy, just time together to reconnect as family. They make sure others eat as well. By giving to Catholic Charities of Youngstown, the Johnsons join other angels who care for those in need, regardless of religion or race. Show your wings with a gift to Catholic Charities, changing lives one family at a time, providing housing, emergency financial assistance, senior services, and more. Give now at ccdoy.org.
Our song today is from the CD called Come Unto Me. It is by Reno Angelini.
And I will give you rest. Come unto me, and have come to this place, eager to find your peace. Come to us now with your grace, so that our faith may increase, so that our faith may increase. Come unto me, and I will give you rest. Come unto me, and I will give you rest. And I will give you rest. Oh, when you're weary from heavy burdens, when you're tired from the strain, take my yoke and put it on you. It will ease your pain. Take my yoke now and learn from me how I am gentle, I am meek, 'cause my yoke is very easy to be carried by the weak. 'Cause my yoke is very easy to be carried by the weak. Come unto me, and I will give you rest. I want you to come unto me, and I'll give you, I will give you rest, and I will give you,
As we celebrate this 25th Sunday in Ordinary Time, we will hear more about the sacred scriptures by Father Larry Frent. He is pastor of St. Louis Church in Louisville.
Someone has what I don't have, and I'm resentful because of this. Or I have something and I suspect that someone else is going to take it from me. I'm resentful because of this. No, I'm not engaging in an open confession here. Rather, I'm giving descriptions of two evils that contribute to so many problems. The evils of envy and jealousy. When I resent someone who has what I don't have, that's envy. When I resent someone because I suspect that he will take what I have, that's jealousy. Our readings are loaded with examples of this. Consider the first reading this weekend. The ungodly will not admit that they're envious of the just one. But they are. They seek to destroy him in his gentleness. They seek to try his patience. Why? Because more attention would come to them than to his goodness. The writer James, in our second reading today, describes jealousy and envy and other ugliness, and he tells us what's the root of all of this. It's self-interest rather than trusting that God will give what we truly need. And in today's gospel, the disciples have a very embarrassing experience. Here they walked with Jesus through Galilee, they heard his second prediction of his death, and they are caught arguing with each other, arguing about which of them is most important. They simply did not understand. Were they envious? Was someone else admired more than they? Were they jealous? Were they unwilling to let someone else be admired as much as they were? I think it's very easy to see envy and jealousy throughout this weekend's readings, and it's not difficult to trace why people grow envious and jealous. What's not so easy is to admit that envy and jealousy can be very real parts of our lives, sometimes in surprising ways, all part of the complicated picture of being human. Can we put envy and jealousy in proper perspective? Think about one item that James shares for us. He tells us that too often we fail to ask God for what we truly need. Instead, we focus on our own self-interests. So what do we truly need? The wisdom of God. Realizing that the wisdom of God always puts envy and jealousy where they belong, out of our lives. This week, can we ask the Lord for what we truly need? Can we ask God to give us this gift of wisdom? Can we pray that envy and jealousy might be not things that control us, but rather things that are controlled by God's wisdom instead? For Wineskins, this is Father Larry Frent.
If there is in you a hunger for food that you have never tasted, and a thirst that remains unquenched, then perhaps you should consider following Jesus Christ more closely. The brightness of his gladness can enkindle in you the fire of his love and create in your heart the unexpected sparks of life in him. Wineskins is produced by CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. It is brought to you by the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. I'm your host, Father Jim Corda, wishing you a beautiful week.